Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of 10 Minutes with Kuhle. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you can see that the quality of this live stream is slightly lower than it usually is. And that is because the software that I use to live stream has got a bit of an issue, a technical issue. So I've got to use Zoom for the time being because I've got to record, ladies and gentlemen. I've not been recording for quite a while because I've had a rough schedule on my hand. I had an interview with the Mail and Guardian. They've got a whole podcast going on there. I spoke about farm murders and BE and why we don't need BE, as well as, you know, but back to what we're doing here, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, political scoundrels, siphoning millions from made up parties. Uh-huh. Floyd. Nonetheless, today's episode is on Floyd Shivambu from Red Beret to Bushiri's spiritual advisor. Very interesting. Now, Floyd Flip-Flop Shivambu, once the deputy president of the EFF, co-architect of land expropriation, free education, and financial chaos, is now apparently trying to resurrect himself politically for the third time in under 12 months. Get that straight, in under 12 months. And this time, he's not storming into parliament. Nah, he's storming churches, royal kraals, and Kaiser Mutawung's DMs. Because when you're politically bankrupt, you naturally seek out Petrus Motsepe for guidance. Let's unpack this circus. After being unceremoniously booted out of Umkhonto Wesizwe party, which to be fair has been more of a political WhatsApp group with a budget than a party, Floyd says he was accused of trying to overthrow Jacob Zuma, which sounds ambitious for someone who couldn't even survive Julius Malema's side eye. Possessing supernatural powers and get this, getting money from Stellenbosch. Stellenbosch. That's ANC and EFF code for we lost the argument. Blame white monopoly capital. Now, Floyd is calling consultative meetings across the country with traditional leaders from ZCC, and I quote Michael Nkuna, Ivan Khoza, and Kaiser Mutawung to ask South Africans if he should launch a party or a new party. Nowhere did he speak about speaking to Kali Creole, but nonetheless, it's Floyd at the end of the day, because nothing screams policy clarity like climbing to an IPCC stage and going to meet the PSL and God knows whoever, you know. And yes, he visited Bushiri over Easter. And one asks himself, couldn't he have found a local prophet, I mean, there is so many local criminal prophets instead of traveling for 2 hours out to Lilongwe to go and meet a convict, someone who's a fugitive, actually, to go and meet a fugitive who has run away from the law. Couldn't he have gone to a local corrupt prophet, Well, no, but he took a 2 hour flight. There's many, these of the world, the Mboros of the world. Now, because what's more on brand, for a populist politician than seeking divine intervention from a man who literally skipped the country while on bail? Now, look, let's be fair. Floyd says he hasn't left MK. We've heard that before when his own political father, Jacob Zuma, said he's not leaving the ANC. He says, I will never resign from MK, close quote. He declared as he simultaneously announced a new political party. This is like saying, I'm still married to my wife, but I've already picked out my second wife, and we're naming our future kids. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what Floyd is trying to do here is basically forcing Jacob Zuma's hand to fire him, because firing Floyd makes a better story for Floyd than him resigning. That's what it does. Basically, Floyd is telling Zuma, come, come and get me. Please, I beg you, just kick me out. That's what he's doing. Because, I mean, you've only got so many moves in your life. You know, he has already resigned from the ANC. He has resigned from the EFF. Now, would it make sense for him to resign for a third time from the Mkhonto weSizwe party? No. But it would make sense for him to be kicked out in order to start something new, because then he's got a reason to start and to spearhead this new project. So basically, he's actually telling Zuma, fire me and give me a reason to go and start this new thing. Now, let's not forget, Floyd's real sin wasn't Bushiri. It wasn't Zuma, and it wasn't supernatural voodoo from Malawi. It was money and Duduzile Zuma. Yes, Shivambu reportedly tried to centralize control of the MK party's finances. In other words, he tried to bring order to a chaotic kleptocracy. And in doing so, he stepped on some toes, or more accurately, some offshore bank accounts. MK insiders say millions were vanishing from the party's war chest, like ghost voters at an ANC conference. You see, in state capture circles, transparency is the dirtiest word you can say. Worse than audit, worse than capitalism, even worse than tax ombudsmen or farm murders. The real scandal, the only real scandal here, supposedly, is that Floyd Shivambu still believes he's a revolutionary, while floating around in designer suits, reading out fake intelligence reports, and hosting media briefings at luxury hotels. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you listened to the press briefing, you will note that Floyd speaks about the Moroccan embassy claiming to fund Mkhonto weSizwe party, saying that they would fund the MK party on the fact that they go and support Morocco's fight to occupy Western Sahara. Now, this is not the only country that is actually mentioned in this whole, or the only sort of funding or illicit form of funding that is mentioned in the press briefing, but he does touch on that. As well as, let's not forget, he makes the claims, or he insinuates, because it's very important, he insinuates that people such as Duduzile Zuma are high on drugs and they tweet at midnight because they are high on drugs. He literally said, we are not going to be disturbed by people who use drugs and tweet at midnight. That's what he said. So, comrades, let's fight capitalism. But first, pass the champagne and let's ask Ivan Khoza what he thinks. It's so practical that you'd be forgiven for thinking MK stands for Mickey Mouse Communists. Well, my final take is we're watching the death spiral of populism in real time. Floyd is a political wanderer, Liam Jacobs, ousted from the EFF, sabotaged in MK, and now is begging for relevance from church bishops and PSL soccer teams. At this point, he doesn't need a new political party. He needs a rebranding team, a career coach, and maybe a visit to the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural and Religious and Linguistic Communities. Because when your politics starts looking like a spiritual tour of the ZCC revival movements, it's time to admit you've lost the plot. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been 10 Minutes with Kuhle, where we expose South African politics like Shivambu's fake WhatsApps, full of action, lacking receipts, and sponsored by Stellenbosch. I'm sure he likes that. Now, don't forget, we are running channel membership, which is as cheap as 20 Rand. It really helps to keep the lights on, and it helps to really keep me burning the truth. Please like, subscribe, and may your supernatural powers never get you expelled. from your own party. Till next time, bye.